Hello travelers, Boardman21 here, and today's build is the dual welding Spellblade. We're going to be running Shatter Strike. There are some other skills you can dual with as well, but Shatter Strike is the build today, and the attack speed is ridiculous. Basically, you're getting more attack, more base attack, more added cold damage, and added physical damage with Shatter Strike than you could even with a two-hander, and yet you can still take access of the 75% increased attack speed inside the skill tree with Shatter Strike because you're not wearing a two-hander, which means that you can attack extremely hard, and since you're dual welding, you have to wear a sword on the offhand. The nice thing about that is you get the 200% crit multi that's inside of the Shatter Strike tree as well, so we're doing a full hit damage, 100% crit build where you hit as hard as a rock. In fact, you're critting the training dummy for about 40k. Now remember, each strike recasts twice, so you're technically doing 3 hits with one skill, and each hit is doing 40k damage. So technically you're hitting for 120k damage, and you have a crazy attack speed. As you can see, we're just melting the monolith bosses in the gameplay right now. And on the training dummy, you can't even read the numbers because it's just a blur. It attacks so fast. Not quite sure what they're going to do about this one. Maybe they leave it alone. Your survivability is a bit on the low side. We didn't run any resistances, so you can definitely change some of your gear around. There's plenty of damage, so you can get rid of some of the decks and stuff that I stacked on this gear. But this is overall so much fun to play because it just feels so much more DPS heavy than the old Spellblade, and it's not boring anymore. It just feels like a very fun, fast-paced, kill or be killed type build. Alright, let's go ahead and get into the skills. For skills, we're running Enchant Weapon, Mana Strike, Flame Ward, Shatter Strike, and Teleport. For Enchant Weapon, we're using this to give us a huge boost of cold damage and attack speed at the same time. It also gives us a little melee damage, and it's definitely going to boost your damage for the entire time that it's active, which I believe is, with the added duration, 9 seconds total, which means that once you activate it, you have 9 seconds to just completely annihilate things. So teaming this up to have this proc at the same time as Flame Ward and then use all of your mana with Shatter Strike is how to put the biggest amount of DPS out. We have 4 points in Celerity for that increased melee attack speed, 2 points in Shivering Blade for some chill chance, 5 points in Frost Brand for 25 added melee cold damage and 100% increased cold damage, 1 point in Frozen Sparks, which will give you 1 more melee lightning and physical damage per 10 physical damage that is on your weapon, and we're wearing 2 weapons, so you get a double boost that you didn't used to get from this one node. 4 points in Concentration to increase the active duration from 5 seconds to 9 seconds, and 4 points in Efficacy so that the mana cost is now free and you get 40% increased melee elemental damage. For Mana Strike, this is how we get our mana back. You can use Focus instead if you're more of a Focus fan. Most people don't like Focus because you have to stand still. This one allows you to kind of hit somewhat ranged, but you can also hit multiple enemies and do damage to them. So if you're leeching or depending on how you play, this way it can just be funner. You can also, wiggle down the bosses or mobs' health while you're getting your mana back. For this, we have 3 points in Arcanist Blade for plus 9 mana on hit, 4 points in Swift Sap for 20% increased attack speed, 4 points in Sprit Blade for 120% increased area of hit, so you have a small AoE with it, 4 points in Mana Drain for 80% increased mana gained on hit, 4 points in Critical Mana so that when you crit with it, which you'll crit every time, you get 12 additional mana on hit, and 1 point in Critical Rejuvenation so that your base crit rate is 40% higher, although it won't do any extra critical multiplier damage, but you'll crit 100% of the time, so it's definitely a mana gainer for you. For Flame Ward, this is both being used for defense and offense. It's going to generate some ward, give us some damage reduction, and then it's going to give us a big boost of cold damage, along with a fire aura. We have 4 points in Stalwart Defense for 160 ward, extra ward granted when we use it. 5 points in Barrier means that while it's active, we have 40% less damage taken by hits. 3 points in Dilation for increased duration, 5 points in Infusion for 250% increased fire damage, which we will convert to cold increase, 1 point in Fire Aura, 1 point in Eye of the Flame, and 1 point in Frost Ward to convert all of that fire damage, that 250% fire damage, into 250% increased cold damage. This also gives your retaliation and your fire aura a freeze rate. For Shatter Strike, this is going to be your main damaging skill. There's a lot of different ways to put this skill tree together, but the way we have it here is basically to maximize your attack rate, the amount of hits you get, and the amount of damage that you can do with it. So we have 2 points in Lingering Chill for some increased cold damage and freeze rate multiplier, 2 points in Breath of Cold for 20% more hit damage in area, 5 points in Ice Blink for 75% increased attack speed, which is huge. Now, you don't need this attack speed. You're gonna like one hit all trash mobs and stuff. Against bosses, it's kind of nice, but you can definitely take this 5 points out, and instead of maximizing attack speed, you can maximize damage. And you can take this 5 points and put it in to both Absolute Zero and Cold Presence, and you'll do way more hit damage against things that have more life, so you'll wiggle them down really quick. And then you have, of course, the more hit damage from Absolute Zero, so if you put 4 points there, you have 60% more multiplier added to it, so you'll hit much harder with it. You'll just have a little less attack speed. We have 2 points in Whiteout so that it recasts twice, so now each time you use it, you get 3 attacks out of it. This increases the mana cost and reduces the attack speed, but even with 20% reduced attack speed with 3 attacks instead of 1, it's a huge boost of attack speed. You're going to be hitting non-stop. We have 2 points in Shiver for 40% increased area, 4 points in Cold Still for 200% critical multiplier with a sword. Because we're wearing a sword with the dual welding, it's going to be an automatic boost, so it's kind of a waste of 4 points not to take it. 3 points in Icy Flow for 30% increased mana efficiency, and 9 ward gain when you hit at least one enemy with it. Now, if you're struggling with mana or you'd like to get more attacks, you can also take some of those points and put 2 more in here to reduce the mana cost a little bit further. For Teleport, we have 4 points in Resonant Plasma for some resistances. We're not really too worried about those. It's more of the decoys that we want. So we have 1 point in decoy position, 1 point uncontrolled duplication, and 1 point in unexpected copy, so that we have 3 mirror images wherever we teleport, 1 on departure and 2 where we arrive. We have 2 points in crystalline passage, 1 point in time dilation, and 1 point in mana tunnel, which means that your next spell that you cast after teleport is free. Not a big deal. This also adds 6 seconds to the cooldown, which is kind of a big deal. It means you can't teleport as much. But the main thing that I was after here was the fact that you can have 600% increased freeze rate multiplier with Frigid Departure, which is huge for Shatter Strike because it now means that there's a very high chance you're going to freeze the enemy, and we were even freezing the bosses when we were attacking them. So it gives you a chance to recoup some of that mana that you've lost and attack with Mana Strike, which is really nice for your survivability. Now, the base cooldown is 4 seconds. Adding 6 to that makes it 10 seconds, which is a really long time to wait for teleport, but they do give you 50% cooldown recovery speed with 5 points in Tunnel Finder, which you would have thought 10 seconds would go down to 5, but I don't know how their formula works. But you end up only getting the cooldown to 6.7 seconds, which isn't that much more than 4 seconds, so for me, it felt worth it, and that's the way that I built it. Feel free to change the points around however you want. For passives, I have 25 points in the base class with 5 points in Mage Flurry, 10 points in Knowledge of Destruction, 8 points in Arcanist, and 2 points in Scholar. We have 8 points in the Sorcerer with all 8 points in Mana Shell for that increased mana, and 77 points in the Mastered Spellblade with 1 point in Elemental Affinity, 8 points in Flamewalker, 8 points in Incinerating Aura, 8 points in Infused Weapon, 5 points in Frozen Steel, 8 points in Arcane Warden, 5 points in Arcane Shielding, 5 points in Essence Duel, 5 points in Mana Reaver, 5 points in Inferno, 1 point in Gemini so that you can dual wield, 8 points in Prismatic Blade, and 10 points in Volka's Razor. For items and idols, there are 2 types of idols we're wearing. One is going to be increased melee elemental damage with increased mana, and the other is increased critical strike chance with increased cold damage. And these critical strike ones are so that we could get as close to possible to 100% crit. If you run more crit on your weapons, if you put like more critical strike instead of added cold damage, which will hurt you. But if you do that on your weapons and you don't need as many of these, you can wear 4 of these idols. If you don't want any of the increased mana or melee, you could wear 8 of the increased critical strike chance idols, and that'll give you 100 and over 100% crit really easily, so where you don't have to put as much on your gear. Alright, you can see we're wearing no uniques. We are wearing a dagger in our offhand. The reason we went with a dagger is because it has base critical strike chance. We did added melee cold damage, added critical strike chance. We have shred armor, and increased stun chance with melee attacks. For our one-handed sword, we have added cold damage, added melee critical strike chance, shock on hit, and ferality on hit. For our chest, we have int, dex, melee elemental damage, and freeze rate per stack of chill. For the helm, we have the same int, dex, increased melee elemental damage, and freeze rate per stack of chill. We have a Jade Amulet for that melee attack speed. We have critical strike chance on an increased dodge, flat dodge, and mana. For our belt, we have dodge rating on potion use, flat dodge rating, and hybrid health. For our rings, we have increased critical strike chance, dex, health, and dodge rating. We have that on both rings. We're wearing the soul embraces for more critical strike chance. We have dex, increased melee attack speed, hybrid health, and flat dodge rating. For the boots, we have int, dex, movement speed, and hybrid health. And we have a Radiant Crest for the critical strike multiplier with dex, increased critical strike chance, mana, and flat health. For our character sheet, you can see we're not really running any resistance. We do have almost 50% dodge. On potion use, it jumps up to 65%, so that's our defense for this build. We have almost 20% armor. Not very much attack, but we do have 247% crit multiplier, which is actually 447% when we attack with Shatter Strike. That's why it hits really, really hard. We have 56 dex, 37 int. Now Shatter Strike gets +1 melee cold per point of dex, that's why we stack so much. So it gets an additional 56 added cold damage to the skill, which is also why it does a lot of damage. And then for the skill rotation and how we play the build, I like to put Flame Ward, Enchant Weapon, and Teleport all on autocast. Now, Mana Strike, again, is going to be your mana back, and Shatter Strike is going to be your main damaging skill. So I wait for these. They have about the same amount of cooldown. So actually they have the exact same cooldown. I wait for them to come off at the same time, and then I'll just spam, and you can just see you go through your mana really quick. But we're doing 30 to 40k crits, and I couldn't even tell you how many hits that we just did. But in about 2 seconds, we just completely annihilated whatever it is we're attacking, and within a few seconds, you get all of your mana back. And again, you can just attack. You get, I don't know, 100 attacks in right there. And then you get your mana back in a couple of seconds, and you can do it all over again. Super fast attack speed, hits like a truck, and you can get all of your mana back really quick. Alright, let's go ahead and get into some more gameplay.